Folks, this is a video I'm going to do regarding the Mike Brown murder, and there is no statute of limitations on murder. Now, first things first, I need to give a shout out to Darren. I watched the video that he did regarding this subject, and I really appreciated his particular commentary regarding it. It made me curious because in his video, I didn't see the entire deposition that was given by Darren Wilson. So on my own, I went to The Root, who had published the article, and they had gotten their information through the Washington Post. I read the entire deposition, which I'm going to leave a link in this video for, and I'm going to bring that deposition up now. There is the deposition, U.S. District Court document including Officer Darren Wilson's list of admissions. Now, this is 24 pages, and again, I'm going to leave the link, but I'm going to basically state that, number one, Darren Wilson had no reason to stop Mike Brown or Dorian Wilson other than he wanted to screw with them. That's just basically admitted in the deposition. Darren Wilson had no contact with his own police department, which is admitted in regard to the quote-unquote potential or assumed a robbery of that convenience store. He admits that in his own deposition. Darren Wilson further admits in his own deposition that Mike Brown did not attempt to remove Officer Wilson's gun from his holster. He admits that. Darren Wilson further admits that he withdrew his own weapon from his holster. Now, folks, if somebody pulls a gun and points it at you, and you are close enough, what is your response going to be other than to try to get that weapon moved away from pointing at you? That's obvious. You're going to do anything you can do if you're close enough to try to get that weapon's line of sight or trajectory pointing away from you. Darren Wilson further admitted that he had attempted to make body contact, which he did, with Mike Brown. Now, you have to go in and look at this thing for yourself, okay? Because the deposition that he gave, in my opinion, was a rather, shall we call it, friendly fire type of deposition. The officers that took this deposition did not press him like you or I would have pressed him when particular questions were asked, and with Mr. Wilson and his lawyer being present, various questions were objected to or denied, and the person asking the questions chose not to do a follow-up to clean up the question that he was asked. I'll give you an example. Question number 7, on August 9, 2014, when you encountered Mike Brown and Dorian Johnson, they crossed Canfield Drive in an eastward direction. His response was admitted on August 9th, when I first encountered Mike Brown and Dorian Johnson, they were walking on Canfield Drive in an eastward direction. Denied as to the remainder of the request. Well, obviously lawyers are there for a reason, and they look for any slight chink in the armor of a question in order to try to either deny it or to claim that the question is vague. And that was done so many times during this deposition that it's fairly ridiculous. And if I were the questioner, I myself might have gotten a little ticked off as far as how they were trying to dance around this. But if you go to question 12, on August 9, 2014, when you first encountered Mike Brown and Dorian Johnson, your first words were, "Get the fuck out of the street or on the sidewalk." That was denied. But then when you go to question 13, on August 9, 2014, when you first encountered Mike Brown and Dorian Johnson, you used profanity directed at them. Okay. The response is, defendant objects on the grounds this is vague as to time. At one point in time during the subject encounter, I stated to Mike Brown, "Get the fuck back." Okay, well, that could have been cleaned up. And there are numerous examples of this type of a response. If you go to the actual deposition, and again, I'm going to leave a link, you could see for yourself how the attorney helps Mr. Wilson to dance around various questions. But the questions that he can't pretty much dance around are, in my opinion, damning. Now, Officer Wilson acknowledged that Mr. Brown did not have a gun on him, but he refused to acknowledge that Mike Brown did not have any type of weapons. This piece of crap police officer considered Mike Brown to be a weapon because of his size. Now, again, you need to go deep into this deposition, because every time a probing question is asked, there is an objection on the grounds of the vagueness, in particular of time or of distance. But it is without a doubt that Mike Brown, according to Officer Wilson's own deposition, again, did not try to grab Officer Wilson's weapon until after Officer Wilson had pulled his weapon out of his holster and obviously pointed it at Mike Brown. Okay. As far as the communication back and forth between Officer Wilson and his own police department, that, in my opinion, is also quite damning, because he claims that he needed a backup to deal with two individuals that were jaywalking. Really? He also claimed that he couldn't be sure about any of the details about the shots that he fired. He also claimed that he knew that he should not have tampered with evidence, okay, and claims that he didn't tamper with evidence, even though he cataloged his own weapon and he washed blood off of his hands, obviously the blood of Mike Brown. Okay, this thing is a mess, and in my opinion, just based on this deposition alone, this should have been enough for a grand jury to vote to send this to trial, because this is basically ridiculous. Now, there is a documentary that's coming out, and this deposition basically is going to back up a lot of the information that's within that documentary. Now, it's not going to back it all up, because the police department is claiming that there was no quote-unquote illegal transaction for a trade of marijuana for cigarillos, and I don't have any information regarding that. But I do know that this police officer shot a man who was already wounded, okay, who had stopped advancing towards him. He shot him in the top of his head when he was already going down. And the autopsy, which I knew there was something up with that. At one point, you have the state's coroners giving one story. You have the people that were hired, the coroner that was hired to do the autopsy by the family of Mike Brown, coming up with something else. And then pressure is being placed, I believe, on that particular coroner to kind of, I'm not going to say walk back his opinion, but to soften his opinion. And then it's a question of the witnesses. I believe witnesses were got to, particularly those two guys that were at that construction site, who indicated that Mike Brown had put his hands up, but later on, their testimony changes. The people who actually viewed the murder, their testimony changes. I think people were gotten to be honest with you. And this would not be the first time that that happened. But again, take a look at the deposition for yourself, and you make your own decision whether you thought that there was sufficient grounds based on the officer's own deposition to bring this to a grand jury, and for a grand jury to find that there was sufficient cause for this thing to go forward with trial. Now, again, we don't know what went down inside that grand jury. We do know that this particular officer was allowed to speak directly to the grand jury. So whatever he said, and whichever way that the prosecutor decided to take this thing, apparently it was cleaned up enough that the grand jury decided to go along with the prosecutor here, who obviously did not want to bring this case to trial. That's just my opinion. You take it for whatever you believe actually went down here. But something was rotten in the state of Denmark on this one, and the right-wing media went to town on this thing. But obviously what they were pushing is not what the officer said in his deposition.